It is very good that we have more elected democracies throughout the world and also in the Asian region. But however, even in the democratic elected countries, there are a lot of challenges that people continue to face. Because elected government or democratic government does not mean that they can do anything, whatever they want. Actually, unless and until the democratic governments do not perform means they do not protect the rights and freedoms of the people. Democracy does not fulfill its objective, whether it is Japan, it is Korea, it is America, it is UK. The democratic government needs to understand that they should ensure that the democratic values and practices they are followed and implemented, and ultimately people get benefit of these democracies. मेरा नाम सैमसन सलामत है और मेरा ताल्लुक़ सेंटर फॉर ह्यूमन राइट्स एजुकेशन पाकिस्तान से है, जो पाकिस्तान में जमहूरियत और इंसानी हकूक़ के लिए ख़ास तौर पर पाकिस्तान में मजहबी रवादारी के लिए काम कर रहा है। मैं जानता हूँ कि पाकिस्तान में ख़ास तौर पर जो मजहबी अक़लियतें हैं, जिसमें क्रिश्चियंस, हिंदूज़ और दूसरी मजहबी अक़लियतें शामिल हैं, उनकी सूरत हाल अच्छी नहीं है। और ख़ास तौर पर ये जो हालिया पेशावर में ऑल सेंट्स चर्च पर हमला हुआ है, इसकी वजह से क्रिश्चियन कम्युनिटी में बहुत ज़्यादा खौफ पाया जा रहा है, बहुत इनसिक्योरिटी महसूस कर रहे हैं। और इसके अलावा और बहुत सारे तरीक़ों के साथ पाकिस्तान में मजहबी अक़लियतों के साथ तासुब बढ़ता जा रहा है, उनके साथ इम्तियाज़ी सलूक किया जा रहा है, वो चाहे वो तालीम का शोबा है या वो नौकरियों का मामला हो या ज़िंदगी के दूसरे मामलात हैं। हर जगह पर मजहबी अक़लियतों को इम्तियाज़ी सलूक का सामना करना पड़ता है। लेकिन कुछ हकीकतें हैं जिनको हमें फेस करना है, और एक हकीकत ये है कि पाकिस्तान में जो वो क़ुव्वतें जिनको हम मजहबी इंतहा पसंद कहते हैं, वो पिछली कई दहाइयों से बहुत स्ट्रॉन्ग हो चुके हैं। और पाकिस्तान की सिविल सोसाइटी और वो तमाम ह्यूमन राइट्स एक्टिविस्ट जो पाकिस्तान में मजहबी इंतहा पसंदी के ख़ात्मे के लिए जदोजहद कर रहे हैं, और पाकिस्तान में ये समझते हैं कि तमाम इंसानों के हकूक़ बराबर हैं और रियासत को तमाम इंसानों को उनके हकूक़ बराबरी की बुनियाद पर देने चाहिए। हमारा ख़्याल है कि हमें अपनी जदोजहद और ज़्यादा स्ट्रॉन्ग करने की ज़रूरत है। हमारा शायद हाल ये नहीं है कि हम डर के और खौफ खा के एक कॉर्नर में बैठ जाएं, बल्कि हमें पुरअमन तरीक़ों के साथ इन मजहबी इंतहा पसंदों का मुकाबला करना है और पाकिस्तान को ऐसी रियासत बनाना है जिसमें तमाम शहरी बग़ैर किसी इम्तियाज़ के अच्छे तरीके से ज़िंदगी गुजार सकते हो। इसमें सबसे ज़्यादा मैं समझता हूँ कि बड़ी ज़िम्मेदारी जो है वो रियासत और रियासती इदारों की है, सियासी जमातों की है। पाकिस्तान में सिविल सोसाइटी की बहुत ज़्यादा ज़िम्मेदारियाँ हैं, लेकिन इसके अलावा वो तमाम हमारी मजहबी अक़लियतें जो परसिक्यूशन का शिकार हैं, उनको भी अपनी जद्दोजहद जो है वो तेज़ करने की ज़रूरत है। मुझे ये पता है कि मेरा ये दोस्त जो इस वीडियो को रिकॉर्ड कर रहा है, ये वीडियो के ज़रिए से मेरी ये रिकॉर्डिंग आपको सुनाएगा। मैं आप सबको सलाम पेश करता हूँ और मैं चाहता हूँ कि आपकी ज़िंदगियाँ जो हैं वो जहाँ कहीं भी हैं, आपकी ज़िंदगियाँ अच्छे तरीके से गुजरें। शुक्रिया। My name is Samson Salamat, and I'm the director of Center for Human Rights Education Pakistan, which is working generally for human rights in Pakistan, but particularly working on the rights of religious minorities in Pakistan, trying to address the issue of religious extremism and fundamentalism in the country, and trying to promote religious tolerance and social harmony in the society. I understand that the religious minorities, including Christians and Hindus in Pakistan, are facing a lot of challenges, and especially after the attack on the church in Peshawar. the insecurity level has been risen high among the religious minorities. But that's also a call for all of us, civil society, the state institution, the political parties, and the religious minorities itself, that we have to counter these religious extremist and fundamental forces. We cannot sit in a corner and bow down before these people who want to destroy Pakistan, who want to destroy the diversity of Pakistan. We have to actually counter them and create a society where all human beings are treated equally. Thank you very much.
Of the Asian Democracy Network. The Asian Democracy Network is an international network of civil society organizations, networks, and democracy advocates in Asia who are dedicated to the strengthening of democracy.
India had yet to liberalize its economy, and the Philippines had only emerged a year earlier from 20 years of dictatorship. The rest of the region was dominated by military authoritarian and semi-authoritarian states. By the late 1980s and 90s, a lot of movements for democracy began to emerge in Asia, including People's Power Movement in Philippines and Movement for the Restoration of Democracy in 1983. During the period of dictator Ziaul in Pakistan, Hwancho Democracy Movement in South Korea, and Democracy Movement in Burma in 80s, Tiananmen Square Movement in China in 89, and People's Movement in Nepal in 1990s, and the recent one. Today, according to Democracy Index 2012, prepared by the Freedom House, there are 117 elected democracies out of 195 countries across the globe, which makes 60%, and it is 19% higher than what was measured almost 25 years ago. And if we look at the Asia-Pacific region, 43% countries fall in the category free. That is 45% of the total population, which means there is open political competition, a climate of respect for civil liberties, significant independent civic life, and independent media. 36% countries are partly free, that is 15% population. Means there is limited respect for political rights and civil liberties. The partly free state frequently suffer from an environment of corruption, weak rule of law, ethnic and religious strife, and a political landscape in which a single party enjoys dominance despite a certain degree of pluralism. While 21% countries are considered as not free countries, that is 40% population. Means still basic political rights are absent and basic civil liberties are widely and systematically denied in these countries. If we look at the contributions for strengthening and promoting democracy in the region during the last 3 decades, a very significant chunk of this contribution goes to the civil society through democracy education initiatives for the advancement of civil and political rights in most of the countries. Even in the semi-authoritarian states, the civil society organization has worked on issues related to democracy, although they are often less accepted as compared to development or relief work, and often find a lot of difficulties and threats. But of course, the political parties, the political activists, media, and people in general have made their contributions also, which need to be recognized. Challenges. What challenges that civil society faces? There is no doubt that still there is a lot that needs to be done to enhance the scope of elected democracies in the region. And there are many difficulties in this regard. For instance, The issue of transparency and credibility of the elections, and for that matter, independence of election commissions and other state institutions involved for the electoral process. Interference of the military establishments, which still remains as a potential threat. Pakistan and Burma may be considered as good examples. And of course, interference of the international powers in the internal politics of many Asian countries. And the issue of effective participation of women and other marginalized groups. All these issues are challenges to the elected democracies, which civil society needs to keep an eye on and address these issues on consistent basis. One of the biggest problems which civil society needs to address through its democracy education initiatives is that democracy is not just the elections, and it needs to be coupled with the principles of democracy: equality, non-discrimination, the rule of law, civil and political rights, and freedoms of the people. It is important to ensure that the states must practice the principles of democracy, that is, equal citizenship, irrespective of religion, caste, ethnicity, and regional background. It must ensure equality of opportunities to all for the advancement in social, economic, political, and guarantee security of life and prosperity of its citizens. This is for me democratic citizenship education. Moreover, a greater realization among the people about their rights and about holding and questioning their governments about their rights and freedom is important too. While it is easy for the rulers, political leaders, and political parties to claim their commitment to these principles, however, the real challenge lies in making them operational. The key question is, how does one create and sustain institutions and processes that reflect the spirit of democracy and participatory governance? A large number of states are unable to fulfill these conditions. The commitments of many rulers, leaders, and institutions to democracy are just equal to lip service, or they view democracy as an instrument to achieve power and then implement a partisan, non-democratic agenda. Other states selectively employ some aspects of democracy to create a make-up phase scenario. They hold elections, establish elected legislative bodies, and install elected governments, but do not empower the institutions and the people holding the key positions in the system. Power is thus exercised by an elite group, while a face of democracy is created to legitimize its rule. Therefore, these operational realities, which hinders the quality and substance of democracy, needs a special attention and care by the civil society. Addressing democracy along with its principles is not an easy thing to do in many countries of the region, if not all of them. But despite difficulties, the civil society or the human rights community has done a marvelous job for the advancement of democratic citizenship education in conjunction with international human rights standards. In South Asia and other regions of Asia, there are a lot of good examples where the civil society organizations has not only produced good research documents, worked with international human rights mechanisms, made effective networks, both national, regional, but has also launched very, very effective local campaigns on democracy to enhance the scope of civil and political rights, and also to enhance awareness among the common people. For example, democracy education programs launched by a civil society organization of Pakistan during the dictatorship of Pervez Musharraf contributed significantly in generating the movement for the restoration of democracy and oust the military dictator despite a lot of limitations put on freedom of expression, movement, and other freedoms in Pakistan. In Nepal also, the civil society's role was very practical and significant in the recent movement to end monarchy and bring democracy in the country. Civil society organizations across Asia has used very innovative and interesting ways and means. Social theater, video documentation, and music has been used very nicely, especially to attract common people. Especially youth, and most recently social media has successfully been used to speak against the violations of human rights and basic freedoms, and to generate public support for rights and freedoms. They are not afraid, these activists, the civil society actors, they are not afraid to come on the roads despite strict bans put by the authoritarian rulers. But in some of the countries, the challenges are much more than other countries in the region. In the last 15 years, while working with different civil and political rights programs, I have observed that there is a serious lacking of conceptual clarity on democracy, and for that matter, its acceptance beyond elected democratic government has remained very, very difficult. Non-clarity and confusions on the concepts of human rights and democracy does not only prevail among the general public, but also even among those who work for human rights. Terming human rights and democracy as a Western agenda and connecting it to a particular religion rather than focusing on international standards are the common issues that come across. Even during the recent elections in Pakistan, we have observed anti-democracy campaigns by some of the religious extremist and fundamental groups who term democracy as an anti-Islam system and demand for theocratic mode of governance. The extremist and fundamental groups try to stop people to participate in the elections through violent attacks. However, the civil society, political parties, media, and the people of Pakistan participated in the elections and gave their verdict in favor of democracy. And that is the lesson that the civil society of Pakistan has learned. This is one of the reasons that Pakistan is and has been a difficult place. Since the groups that do not support democracy, they are anti-democracy. They bring threat to the people who work for human rights and work for democracy. And they face threat calls and many other types of threats in the country. And I think this is a kind of situation which is faced by the human rights defenders and democracy campaigners across Asia. Now the important question is what needs to be done for effective democracy and civic education in the region, and amongst the challenges that we have tried to learn. If we look now, undoubtedly there is a need for a struggle for elected democracies in the region, and it is also much important to focus on the implementation on the principles of democracy. That is equality, non-discrimination, the rule of law, civil and political rights, the freedoms for the people to make sure that the benefits of democratic governance reaches to all citizens without any discrimination. Yes, we rightly believe that democracy has emerged and it has proved as a better system of governance in our world. But it is also true that if the democratically elected government do not deliver to guarantee the human rights of its citizens, including justice, economic empowerment, safety and security of their lives, and protection of their fundamental freedoms, then people may slowly get fed up with this system. The authoritarian powers and the ruling elites may always be in favor of creating propaganda and doubts against democratic system, because it may help prolonging their rule, but it is in the best interest of those who support and advocate for democracy that we are able to convince people that failure of any elected democratic government in any particular country is not actually the failure of democracy and democratic system. Yes, democratic citizenship education is very important for civil society to contribute, but with some different approaches now, with some modern techniques and much more commitment in this changing world. And I would like to suggest here one is that we need concrete, extensive learning education programs at regional and country level to enhance the conceptual clarity, especially amongst the member of our own community, to equip them with the understanding and skills to deal with the challenges that we face during working on democracy and human rights. Center for Human Rights Education, Pakistan, where I come from, at the beginning of new decade in 2011, launched a democracy decade in Pakistan and initiated democracy education programs, including an extensive training program called Participatory Course on Democracy and Human Rights, which brings together human rights activists, university students, media persons, members of the minority communities and political parties at one platform. And we have at the Center for Human Rights Education, along with so many civil society organizations, we have observed, a great deal of transformation in this regard. Point number 2. Many civil society organizations undertake research programs and surveys to gauge the performance of the elected government, which is very important. But educating people to hold their representatives and the governments accountable against their rights is much more to be focused in our education programs now. There is a need to enhance the realization among the people that their role does not end by casting a vote in the elections, but their role is also important to use their power to question and claim their rights and freedoms. Point number 3. Regular interaction and close collaboration with political parties, especially with the young political leadership, is very important in the struggle for democracy, because with the young cadre, civil society may find more space and there may be more chances of transformation and strengthening of democratic culture with the political parties. Point number 3. Everyone knows that media has power and importance in today's world. And therefore, civil society needs to use this power to maximize the benefits of its education program, but very carefully and tactically. The first most important thing which needs to be focused is the training of media persons to enhance their understanding on democracy, to win their support and space in the media. Point number 5, youth especially, the students in the colleges and universities needs to be targeted for democracy education, not only to enhance their understanding of democracy and its principles, but also to prepare them to play their role as active citizens to defend democracy and promote its values. And the last point is, human rights and democracy needs to be incorporated in the school's curriculum, which can help transform the society in a more sustainable way. And I end up here by quoting Franklin D. Roosevelt, who said that there is nothing mysterious about the foundations of a healthy and strong democracy. The basic things expected by our people of their political and economic systems are simple, and that is equality of opportunities for youth and others, jobs for those who can work, security for those who need it, the ending of the special privileges for the few, and the preservation of civil liberties for all citizens. Thank you very much, and long live democracy.
네, 삼선 살라만 파키스탄 인권교육센터 센터장님의 파키스탄에서의 민주주의 발전과 민주시민 교육 현장에 대해서 지금 진행되고 있는 부분에 대해서 생동감 있게 발표를 해줬습니다. 삼손이라는 이름에 걸맞게 파키스탄 군부 오랜 무사라프 군부 독재를 민주주의 교육 프로그램을 통해서 축출하고 이어서 2011년부터 새로운 파키스탄 민주주의 발전을 위해서 파키스탄 민주주의 10년 프로그램을 운영하고 있다. 민주주의라는 것이 어떤 그 경험을 통해서 봤을 때 대의민주주의가 갖는 한계는 뚜렷하다. 표를 받고 어떤 공약을 하고 거짓 공약을 하고 당선을 된 이후에는 당선된 권력자들, 국회의원들 소수의 엘리트 정치를 하고 뽑아준 민의를 대변하지 않는다. 그렇기 때문에 민주주의에 대한 내용과 가치, 개념들을 명확하게 해야 되는데 평등, 비차별, 법치, 시민권과 정치적 권리가 자유와 함께 보장되는 그런 민주적 시스템을 명확히 개념을 하고 이를 시민교육을 통해서 전파해야 된다. 그렇지 않으면 민주주의가 향해되고 어떻든 이용당한다라고 합니다. 그래서 그 부분은 한국이나 다른 나라에서도 비슷한 상황인 것 같습니다. 한국도 지난 30년 가까운 군사독재에 대한 민주투쟁을 통해서 정치적 민주사회를 이루었지만 실질적으로 사회 경제적 민주주의가 이루어지지 않으면서 빈부격차가 심화되고 있고 어떤 빈곤층이 더 늘어나는 그래서 실질적인 민주체제에서의 행복한 삶을 다수가 누리는 그런 꿈꾸는 민주사회를 이루지 못하고 있습니다. 그래서 이런 삼손 살라마 씨의 대의 민주주의 한계를 극복하기 위해서 참여 민주주의에 대한 교육, 내용, 개념들을 강화해야 된다라는 제의는 우리가 경청해야 될 그런 부분이라고 생각합니다. 아울러 그런 그 종교, 신분, 민족 출신의 영향을 받지 않는 평등한 시민권의 보장이 필요하다라고 하는데 그 부분은 아마 파키스탄이 종교 분쟁, 이슬람과 비이슬람 간의 어떤 끝없는 종교 분쟁이 있어서 그런 민족적, 종교적 차별에 의한 어떤 테러나 탄압이 있어서는 안 되겠다라는 부분들을 얘기를 했는데 이거를 한마디로 정의한다고 하면 민주주의라는 건 어떤 정해진 틀이 아니라 다수의 사회에 참여하는 모든 구성원들, 소수자를 포함해서 사회적 약자들을 포함해서 모든 사람들이 함께 공유하고 함께 어떤 민주적 어젠다를 개발하고 발전해 나가는 공동체를 이뤄가는 거버넌스를 구축하는 데 있다라는 주제로 발표해 주신 것으로